Landscape photography is one of those genres that a lot of us dabble in from time to time. I personally love going out to shoot landscape. I'm very lucky with where I live. I live down the south coast, so I've got the South Downs, I've got the sea, I've got loads of stuff around me. I've got about 3 different forests around me. So there's lots of stuff to go and shoot all the time, always different light to play with, different weather conditions, loads of stuff. But what's the best focal length for landscape photography? That's the question. And this is Tutorial Tuesday. Welcome back to Tutorial Tuesday, where each and every Tuesday we bring you a brand new fresh photography tutorial. This week we're talking about landscape photography. Now it is raining outside. I was actually going to go and shoot this on a nice landscape, but it's absolutely pouring outside. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do that in here instead. But it doesn't stop us talking about landscape photography because it's such an interesting genre. You can go out and do all kinds of different things, even within one location. It can just be a really interesting thing to explore. But what is the best focal length to go and take landscape photos with, right? Because is it 16mm? Is it 50mm? Is it 200mm? Now I'm gonna answer the question immediately. The best focal length, and this is just an official answer for landscape photography, is, well, there isn't one. I think we all knew that was probably what I was gonna say, but it doesn't stop us talking about why you might use different focal lengths for your landscape photos. A lot of photographers will gravitate towards a wider focal length, so something like a 16-35, a 24mm, something like that, which does work really well for a specific type of landscape photo. Now, a wider lens like that is going to allow you to really capture the wider picture, right? I mean, obviously to a degree, but it allows you to get that big vista in the frame. Just capture that big view. You're probably gonna have either a lot of sky or a lot of foreground. We've talked in the past about how to think about wide angle composition, right? You might wanna think about what you want to include in the foreground, what's important in the photo, having a visual interest in the foreground as well as the middle ground and the background. Wide angle lenses tend to push that background away a little bit, make that much smaller in the frame. So you do need to think about what's much closer to you. That said though, it can absolutely capture the majesty of what's around you and really, really give you some stunning results. But while that's something that a lot of photographers gravitate towards, it doesn't mean it's the only way to capture a landscape photo. If you move up to, let's say, 35mm or 50mm, that's going to capture a feeling which is much closer to how it looked to your eye when you were there. That's going to really pull you into the image because it's going to feel like this is how it would have looked while you're there. This photo, for example, was taken on a 50mm lens, and it really feels like that farmhouse nestled in the hills is how I saw it while I was there. That goes for this photo as well. This was shot in a 40mm lens, but it really pulls that feeling of this is how it looked while you were there. It really captures a moment in time as you would have seen it. And that can be a great way to capture a landscape photo as well. That really allows you to pull your viewer in like that. And for that reason, I tend to do a lot of my landscape photography on a 24-70 lens, because that really allows me to choose in the moment, do I want to go wide, 24mm, or do I want to zoom in, 40mm, 50mm, 70mm, depending on, do I want to cut out a bit of that foreground? Do I want to just focus in on this element of the landscape? Or do I want to grab that entire wide, beautiful vista? But we can go even tighter than that. Something like a 105mm or 135mm can look really lovely. And if you're shooting on a prime lens, you're gonna have probably a much shallower depth of field to play with. Something like this, for example, I felt I was only able to capture this on a longer lens, in this case, a 135mm. It was just one part of the landscape at the perfect time of day with the sun setting, that beautiful golden light, but I didn't need everything around it. I really wanted to focus in on this one section. And that's what a longer lens is gonna let you do. So let's say a 135 or even a 70-200 is gonna allow you to pick out compositions within that wider view. And something which can really help landscape photos is actually honing in on a subject, finding something in that photo, in the frame, which is the natural anchor point for the whole photo and for the whole composition. That way you can start composing around that. It works as a great spot for your viewer's eye to naturally rest on. Sometimes if you shoot too wide, it can almost feel a little bit messy and the viewer's eye doesn't really know where to stop. It can be looking around, it can be a beautiful photo, but there needs to be a natural resting point to come back to, a subject, a focus point of the image and of your landscape in general. That's much easier to pick out with a longer lens. So let's say you use a 70-200 or a 135mm lens, you're gonna be able to pick that out. But you can go even tighter than that. Go something like a 100-400mm lens. That's really gonna allow you to pick out something specific in the landscape. Play with the light, play with the composition, but really hone in on a subject. For me, the tighter you go, the longer that focal length, the easier it is to pick out a subject. And then it just becomes about how much of the environment around it do you want? For example, going back to this photo, just honing on that farmhouse would not have been such a good photo. You want the environment around it. You want the storm clouds, you want the light. Same with this sort of piece of road or path. You want a little bit of the surroundings around it as well. So if I'd gone to something like 200mm or even tighter, it just wouldn't have worked nearly as well. You need a little bit of the environment around it, but there are times when you can have too much environment and maybe it's too wide. So it's about striking a balance point about what is the focus point, what is the subject of the landscape, and how much of the surrounding landscape do you want? How big in the frame do you want that subject to be? And what other visual interests are there to play with? Do you want the sun in there? Do you want some clouds in there? Foreground elements? Maybe you want to go wider. Maybe it's all about the different layers. In which case, a nice wide angle 16-35 might work perfectly. Something like this, a nightscape like this, yes, I wanted the landscape, but obviously I want the stars as well, so a nice wide lens is gonna work perfectly. But then something like this is all about shooting through the landscape, trying to get to that specific subject nestled in the landscape. Really pick that out amongst everything else. So I guess there's no right focal length, but there's a lot to think about when considering what focal length to shoot at. And it can really change the feel and the look of your landscape photo. That's something which I think is key, and you can absolutely have a favorite, but it's worth experimenting a little bit. I tend to go for zoom lenses because then I can experiment. I can take different types of photo of the same landscape while I'm out and about. But a prime lens, especially something like a 135 f1.8, that allows you to get that beautiful shallow depth of field, shoot through something, to pick out a subject behind that, frame it with that foreground, and that can be beautiful as well. I guess it's really just about finding your style. What works for you? What do you like doing? And what do you like coming away with? If you can, experiment, but if not, find the one you like and really hone that skill. Now, I would love to hear, what is your favorite focal length for landscape photography? You can only take one lens. What are you taking? I would love to know. Prime, zoom, are you going tight, you're going wide? I'd love to know. Let me know in the comments, because I think that's super interesting. You can check out all the lenses we used for all these different photos by checking out the links down in the description. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's new content every week. I'll see you in the next video, but until then, as always, thanks for watching.